So we were given instructions, look, go hard on the military issue. You've got to push this military issue. You've got to take on the stand of these people going into the army. It's not the ANC line. I later learned that the people involved in the forward areas, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and so on, and the people like Hani, Joe Jele, who headed the political and military committee, had a different position on that from people like Thabo and some of those who were in London. In the end, their position predominated on this issue because the reason they were opposed to people going into the army was they said, firstly, if we want people to go into the army, we will send them into the army and we will recruit them. And if they have to take condemnation from their friends, that's fine. But for someone who's a student leader to go in, it's very bad for non-racialism, but also it prevents building a kind of anti-military movement. And that's what they wanted us to do. And in fact, there was some truth in that, because once Oret went, NUSAS had things called milcoms. And as soon as Oret went into the army, they found an excuse to close them down. So
just to be clear, it was the Mbeki camp that was against.
I to believe. I don't look. I'm probably Mbeki would deny it, but we were led to believe that Mbeki had given the thumbs up to the strategic participation position. And later, I realized this was an issue of conflict when I had a long meeting with Chris Hani, and he pushed me and pushed me and pushed me on what did they say, what were they saying, who told them to do this, and I could see. It took me a while. I eventually realized he was trying to use it as a stick to beat Mbeki with. But anyway, so that's what we did, and we went back then to Cape Town and started pushing this position, which was against the established position of NUSAS, and it caused immense amount of shit. And I mean, I was particularly didactic about it. Obviously, we weren't allowed to say this is the ANC's position, but we probably got quite close to saying that. And so conflict now within NUSAS, and at that point, my brother Michael is a couple of years older, was in the NUSAS head office as well, and he was also working with me and people like Brett and Janet and Richard Goode and various others in pushing this position. And at the same time, we were encouraged to send other people. We weren't yet given the authority to recruit, so we were encouraged to send other people out with our recommendation, and then they would be recruited. So you've got people like Brett taking trips out to Zimbabwe, and my brother Michael, and other people. And we had a 3-person unit at that stage, which was myself, Richard Goode, and Janet Cherry. And that worked out in some ways very well. I mean, we were very productive. They wanted us. We got messages from them. They would ask us that we'd send out suggestions for pamphlets. Then those pamphlets would come back. But there was a lot of incompetence from the ANC side. There's one meeting where they asked me, sent a coded message to me to come out and meet them at a place called the Malapi Hotel in somewhere in Botswana, and I flew out and went there, and the contact didn't arrive. And the message hadn't been sent properly. The bottom part of the message wasn't sent, which was respond to this in this way, and that never arrived. So there was that. Another package of pamphlets arrived that was sent for us to distribute, and I'd given a postal address of a very close friend, and she went to collect them, and the parcel fell open. It was badly packaged, and all these pamphlets fell out in the post office. ANC pamphlets. At that stage, this is now very early 80s. There was no ANC around. It was like, so there was one other thing they did, which was terrible, which was they asked for a list of school kids from me who would who potentially. And I probably should have said, what do you need it for? But you couldn't have that kind of communication because everything was sent coded and took, weeks for messages to get back and forth. So I sent out the list on behalf of the unit, and then they posted ANC pamphlets to these school kids. And you can imagine what their parents thought. And, where did they get the names from? Then the school kid who we had been working with got exposed, and and then ultimately it drew things closer to me. So there was lots of stuff like that, and that the ANC wasn't doing they weren't doing a very good job of it. And on top of that, we had a lot of conflict within the unit I was in, which there was related to personal stuff. There was 2 men and 1 woman. Didn't work. I'll say no more than that, but it was a problem.